Alhamdulillah wa sallallahu wa sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. So we went over a lot of the major parts of Zawaj, and the major parts that we went over are the beginning of Zawaj, like the actual act. We talked about who can get married to who and whatnot. The next part that we're gonna go over is the difficult parts when it comes to nikah. So the next fasal we'll be talking about breaking up the time. Al-qasam. There's al-qasm with the sukoon and the sin. This is breaking up things. So if you have multiple wives, each one gets 1 day. So you have four wives, then you give each one 1 day, and you can't give one more than the others, unless one of them says, no, it's okay for you to give my day to someone else. We'll talk about that. But this is what's called qasm. It's different than qasam. Qasam is like making a oath, a qasam. So this is qasam, and so this is like when they break one thing up to another. And also nushuz, and we'll talk about nushuz as well, which is when the wife becomes disobedient and leaves the obedience of her husband. And because there's certain consequences for all of these things. So the author here, Abu Shujaa, rahimahullah, he says, "Faslun, وَالتَّسْوِيَةُ فِي الْقَسْمِ بَيْنَ الزَّوْجَاتِ وَاجِبَةٌ." And so he says, of course, like this is something that's obligatory. Taswiyah, making sure that all of them are equal in how many days they get between each other. So in this, everyone needs to have the equal time. And of course, there's certain circumstances when you would have this. That maybe, like if someone's leaving and they're going on a journey, maybe they can't take everyone. So there's a way to go about this. They would like draw they would have like a qur'ah, which is like a way of like drawing lots to see who's the one that goes with them, so that it's fair. And so there's different ways, but here in general it's always wajibah. And so he also says here, وَلَا يَدْخُلَ عَلَى غَيْرِ الْمَقْسُومِ لَهَا لِغَيْرِ حَاجَةٍ. So he says in that he doesn't enter in upon غَيْرِ الْمَقْسُومِ لَهَا. This is like maqsum, here is ism maf'ul, and then also has the laha, and this is the person, like the person that this has been prescribed for. لِغَيْرِ حَاجَةٍ. So say he has 4 wives, and he has say he has a couple places that he has his wives at. So if it's say it's like Iman's Day, and he wants to go over to Rad or whatever. So and he needs something from her. Say he left his computer over there, and it's Iman's Day. So he leaves, he goes over there, gets what he needs for his hajjah, he can do it. But if he stays over there and does extra things or spends the night or something, and it's her night, he has to pay it back. He has to give it back, and he's at them. But if he has something that he needs, okay, he can get what he needs, and he goes right away. If he has a need. But if there's no need, then he can't do this. And this is especially at the night, because the qasam or qasm is for for someone who normally works in the day and they come home at night, and then this would be based off of the night, as opposed to someone who's like a security guard at night. Then it would be like the day. That's the time that is specific for that wife, and he has to be there and whatnot. And that's what would be that would be the basis of that time. And so especially in this time, he can't go spend time at the other person's house. And so this is so he says here that he wouldn't go over there unless for something other than a hajjah. And of course, this is just a need. It's not necessarily a durura. This is of course that would be permissible. And then he says here, وَإِذَا أَرَادَ السَّفَرَ أَقْرَأَ بَيْنَهُنَّ. And so if he wants to go travel, then he would do a qur'ah, which is which is like a type of system of figuring out who is going to do this, like drawing lots. Of course, they talk about some of the ways to do that. So he would have to draw lots to see who this is, so that he's not choosing and favoring. And then if he draws lots, he says here, وَخَرَجَ بِالَّتِي تَخْرُجُ لَهَا الْقُرْآ. So then the one, and then he leaves with the one that the qur'ah went to, like the lots went out with. And so if he did this, then he doesn't have to make up the days for the other women. Say he's a athim, and he goes out and he picks his favorite, and he runs out there and he goes out. Then every single day that he left with her, he's going to have to repay back to the other ones, and she's going to be left out for that time while he's repaying back all the other ones. So and then of course this is also like a dayn that he has to pay back, and it's something that that's very serious if somebody does, of course, like the favoritism, like within someone's heart, that's something that's not within the person's control. Say someone loves one of his wives more than the other, there's nothing he can do about it. But what he can do something about is like his actual actions, like the days that he spends, like the days that he gives each other, he has to make sure that this is all the same. He can't do one more than another, even if he loves one more than another. There's no problem with this. The problem is if he's not giving each one their rights and he's giving one of them extra, and he's leaving out the other one from their rights. This is where the problem comes in. And so here, if he draws the lots, whoever goes with them, in this case, he goes out with her, and there's no problem with that, and he comes back. And when he comes back, he doesn't have to. He just starts right back up on the dawr, and with the turns. All the turns come back as they normally were, and he doesn't have to repay anything for that. And so. And this is also from the Sunnah, that the Prophet ﷺ, he did this as well when he went out, when he would go out on some traveling. And so also the next thing that Abu Shujaa says, he says, وَإِذَا تَزَوَّجَ جَدِيدَةً خَصَّهَا بِسَبْعِ لَيَالٍ إِنْ كَانَتْ بِكْرًا. And so when someone gets married, say he gets married, he's going to have a little time for a honeymoon. So he'll have a couple days where he's allowed to spend with his new wife. And if she's a bikr, like she's never been with a man before, in this case he gets 7 days with her. And so he gives her 7 days in this sense. And he has to give her this. He has to give her these 7 days, and this is obligatory for him to give him these 7 days that are all together. And then after that, he doesn't have to pay back the 7 days that he did for those. No, this is for him, or this is for that woman, and so she gets 7 days, and then she can start back after that. And then he says here for وَبِثَلَاثٍ إِنْ كَانَتْ طَيِّبَةً. And if she is she's previously married, or if she's tayyib, she's not a virgin, then in this case she would get only 3 days. And so she get 3 days in this, and she gets the choice. She also gets the choice to choose 7, and that he's going to pay back. So she has she's also, he doesn't mention it here, but she can have a choice to take 7, and then he'll pay it back to the other people while she's being left out. So there's a choice for her, but her right is 3. And this is also the same for the bikr. And the reason why, like the wisdom behind this, is that a bikr normally, she's not used to men. So for her to get used to her new husband probably takes a little more time, because she's never been around a man before. She doesn't know what men like. Breaking that barrier, like that barrier or the awkwardness, takes maybe a little extra more than like someone who's already been with men, like a tayyib. And so this is like the kind of the wisdom behind it. But of course for the bikr, then she would get 7, and this is obligatory for him, and he needs to be with her. And he would need to be with her for this time as well. He can't just be running out in the streets doing a bunch of extra things unless there's something that is absolutely necessary for him to do. But in the most of the time, he would be with the woman and give her that time. So he can give her that time, especially at the night. And so then he says here, وَإِذَا خَافَ نُشُوزَ الْمَرْأَةِ. So the next thing he's going to go into is nushuz. And nushuz is, what they're talking about is irtifa'. ارتفاع الزوجة على طاعة الزوج. So it's like that the woman, she no longer obeys the husband, and of course what is ma'ruf, like the husband can't be like oppressive, and then when she doesn't obey him in every little weird thing that he says, oh, she's nashiza. No, but in something that's normally like and that is normal for a husband to ask from his wife, if at this point she disobeys him, such as like the woman shouldn't leave the house without the permission of her husband. Of course, if there's a mutual agreement between them, that's one thing. But if there's not that mutual agreement, this is his right to stop her from going outside. So if she goes out without his permission, without like a valid excuse, in this case, like she would be nashiza. And this is a nushuz. And this also comes from the ayah, وَالَّتِي تَخَافُونَ نُشُوزَهُنَّ فَعِذُوهُنَّ. So this is the first step, is that they would give them wa'd, which is like to warn them and reprimand them with words. And so he says here, and if he fears, وَإِذَا خَافَ نُشُوزَ الْمَرْأَةِ وَعَدَهَا. And khaf here, as also he uses the word khaf, تَخَافُونَ نُشُوزَهُنْ. Khaf occasionally will come with the meaning of alimt, alima. So occasionally khawf will come as alima, فَإِنْ خِفْتُمْ. So like a lot of times that, if you know this is of course in the ayah, it's if you know this. But of course that term khawf doesn't necessarily mean fear, like you suspect that's going to happen. No, here it means if you see it and it came in front of you. And so that's what he means here in the Mutn as well. And this is of course this is a thing that we ask Allah to save us from. And of course, if there is nushuz, in this case, the first step here is wa'd, and so he warns her and reminds her of this. And of course, there's certain hadiths that's important for like a woman to know, such as the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He says, "إذا باتت المرأة حاجرة فراش زوجها لعنتها الملائكة حتى تصبح." And so, like if a woman spends the night hajira firash zawjiha, and like if she's leaving the bed of her husband, then the malaika, they all they yalan talanuha, like there's Latin from them until she awakes. Of course, this is a serious consequence for nushuz, and of course this should be one of the things that the husband make sure that his wife knows the consequences of this. It's not just a light matter, because it can be of the kaba'ir here, or is of that. And also another one, أَيُّمَا امْرَأَةٍ بَاتَتْ وَزَوْجُهَا رَاضٍ عَنْهَا دَخَلَتِ الْجَنَّةِ. And this is also another one of them, which is a hadith hasan li ghayri. But that this is whoever, whatever woman batat, which is like spends the night, and her husband is happy and pleased with her, then she will enter Jannah. And of course, this is assuming that she's done all the wajibats that is upon her. But this is of the major things. And also there's many other hadith in this meaning, that it's good for a husband to make sure that his wife knows this, or like make sure that this is of the things he would go to and point to that, and this is very important. So then he says here, in abat is refused, and if she refuses, illa nushuza, so if she refuses except to be nashiza, like to be disobedient in this way, hajaraha. And so then he would leave her in his talking, like he would no longer treat her with the normal lutf, or like with the normal niceness that he would. He separates himself, not like from her in the house. Maybe in the house, yes, but not like he doesn't like leave the house altogether. But he doesn't treat her with the same closeness that he would otherwise, and he treats her with either a bunch of the silent treatment, not completely, unless that's going to be because it's not permissible for someone to like hajar is like leaving someone. And so like in the ayah, the next thing that comes فَعِذُوهُنَّ وَهْجُرُوهُنَّ فِي الْمَضَاجِعِ, which is like to do the hujran, which is like leaving them in their bed, so don't sleep with them in this case. And so like they wouldn't sleep with them or give them that comfort that normally comes from a zawj. And this is usually of the worst things for them. Like for a woman, normally this is the hardest thing on her, and this is the thing that would be the most effective in this. And so this is the next thing, that the next level that it would go to. And and of course, like as far as speaking, there's also hadith that talks about that it's not permissible for a man to leave, like yahjura akhahu, like to leave off speaking to his brother, which is like another Muslim to another Muslim, for more than 3 days. And so this is a general principle. We're not supposed to do a hujran on somebody for more than 3 days. So if you have someone that normally you're speaking to, then you cut them off and you no longer speak to them for more than 3 days, it's haram. After 3 days, it's haram for you to do this. And occasionally, some of them said if it's for reprimanding purposes, such as like some of the things that you'll find from like some of the Salaf did with the people of Bid'ah, they would sometimes do this for them in a way to bring them back to the truth. If it's proving, and also with the case of the three who didn't go out to the Ghazwat Tabuk, and so like these three that didn't go out, they were treated for more than these 3 days in this harsh treatment. And of course, this was reprimand, and it's also to bring them back. And that's the point of it. And so also like doing this on like people that it doesn't have any effect on, there's no point of doing this, and you shouldn't do it. Like if this is not going to do any effect and not going to bring people back to the truth, this is the whole point of the hujran, is to get people to come back. It's not to throw them away from you and to get clear of them, but it's also to bring them back to the truth. So if this is not going to bring anybody back to the truth, then it's going to make things worse. In this case, this is not to be done. And this is the same case with the next thing that is to come as well. And so this would be 3 days, and it could be more if it's going to be effective. And this is because you're trying to bring someone back to the truth, or bring them back to what is right. And so there's a difference of opinion of that. So someone should try to. This is with the speaking in particular. They should take that into consideration when it comes to speaking. He says here, فَإِنْ أَقَامَتْ عَلَيْهِ ضَرَبَهَا. And so, and if she stands up against him, or like if she just wants to keep doing this nusuz, and she's not going to do this, and he says, ضَرَبَهَا. And this is like, it's permissible, and of course, like the darb is something that the fuqaha, they say, is with like a siwak. If I had a siwak with me. But it's basically just a siwak. You have like the siwak and like the amount, and it's غَيْرِ مُبَرَّحٍ. So you're not breaking any bones, and you shouldn't even be, you never hit the face, and you would never be cutting or anything of that sort. It's just it's kind of like to get them like wake up, you know, to get them out of that. But it's never like a punch, like a full-hearted punch. No, this is not permissible. And so this is like a small thing. And also of the other things that the scholars will talk about, this is only for the people that it would actually do good for them. If it's going to do harm, like if it's not going to bring her back, but this is actually just going to cause more nushuz than it was original, then in this case it's haram to do. And so this is important that someone understands, like the only time you would do this is if it's going to have positive results. If you know it's not going to have positive results and you're just releasing anger or whatever, this is haram. Like, and so someone should not do that. And they say like غير مبرح, and this is like, of course, like that it would never be in the face, of course, or at any place that is like detrimental to her health, of course. And so, and of course, better than this in all cases, that they would say was like it's better for him to be forgiving than to ever go to this. But this is permissible in that case. Some of them said that this is permissible from the very get-go. Like from the very get-go, he can either do wa'th or the hujran, or he can do the darb, anyone. And some of them said, no, it has to be after he's done the first two. And of course, this should only be resorted to if it's going to have positive effects, and there's nothing else. But of course, it's not something that should be harmful. Like it should just be like a little wake-up call. So it's important that people understand this, of course, that it's not, no one's allowed to go punching their women in the face or beating them, like which is sad to see that some people have done. And this is not the interpretation of the ayah or the sunnah that is allowed for that. So also he says after this, وَيَسْقُطُ بِالنُّشُوزِ أَنْقَسْمُهَا وَنَفَقَتُهَا. And so he says also, if the woman comes into the state of nushuz, then she no longer has a right to qasm. And the qasm. So like between the zawjats, so in this case, her right for a day has gone away. So if she's going to be nashiza, then she gets skipped. Or like, he can skip her if he wishes. Like if he wants to give her day, mashi, okay. But if she doesn't have the right to that. And the same thing with the nafaqah. The nafaqah for that day would no longer be obligatory. So like the next day, if she started it on the next day when it comes up, and she was still nashiza, then you would no longer have to give her the nafaqah for that day. And of course, like we'll talk about nafaqah, the Shafi'is, they put it day by day. They have every day, they have a certain amount that they give depending on the circumstances of the zawj and the zawja. They will talk about how much is for them, for nafaqah. And this comes up in bab nafaqah. They will talk about this. So she basically loses out on her rights from this, though. And so the next thing that he's going to go into is he's going to talk about khula. And he brings khula, which is a type of divorce. He brings it up before talaq, which is interesting. And maybe it's because it's close to like nushuz. And then he talks about talaq afterwards. But khula is basically talaq that the woman herself, she asked for. And we mentioned it in the last class. It's basically, she will ask for, if she wants to be free from the marriage, she will say, she'll ask him to do talaq on her for an amount of money. She'll say, I'll give you this much money. And a lot of times, like normally it'd be like the amount that he spent in the mahr. This would be like a normal amount. The amount that he spent in the mahr, I'll give it back to you if you divorce me. In this case, she's asking for this divorce, and she will pay for it. And so if she's going to pay for the divorce, if he agrees, then this would be a khula. And there's some different things that go into it that are different than talaq. And we'll talk about it here. He says, wal khulu jaizun ala iwadin ma'lumin. And so he says it's permissible with something that is known in return, like the iwad ma'lum. It needs to be known. It can't be something that's vague. It needs to be actually known. And so and this is there's like the example that comes in the Quran is فَإِن تُبْنَ لَكُمْ عَنْ شَيْءٍ مِّنْهُ نَفْسًا فَكُلُوهُ هَنِيئًا مَرِيئًا. There's also other ayats that come in this meaning, which is then if she gives you something from that you had given her from before that, then you can take it, and kuluhu, like eat it without any problem. And also from the hadith that comes with the wife of Thabit ibn Qais, that she had problems with the marriage, and she was fearing for herself, and that she would no longer be appreciative to her husband. And so so she was asked by the Prophet ﷺ, like, what to do, and he said, will you give back the hadika, like the garden that she was given as mahr? And so she did this, and so he told Thabit to take the hadika and to divorce her. And of course, this is not amr, as in like this is more irshad for him. It wasn't necessarily obligatory, but this is a way. This is one of the types of khula that happened in the actual sunnah. And of course, this is with the actual item that was given for the mahr. It was returned. So, but in the Shafi'i opinion, it can be anything, any known amount, and it doesn't need to necessarily be the same mahr that was given. But this is like something that's standard. And some of the other views of the madahib, they'll say it needs to be the actual same amount that was in the mahr that would be returned. So anything that is that way, and there's other things that are connected to this. And he says, وَتَمْلِكُ بِهِ الْمَرْأَةُ نَفْسَهَا. And so when she does this khula, and then she owns, and then she gets herself back. Like, so she's free from marriage at this point. And also he says, وَلَا رَجْعَةَ لَهُ عَلَيْهَا. And so he says also that there's no going back for him. So normally when a woman gets divorced, she would be, like if it's not 3 times, it's not a 3rd time. And in this case, during her iddah, she can be brought back at any time. If she does khula, there's no going back whatsoever, and unless it's with a new act, and she can go back with a new act. But if this is, if she does the khula, then she's immediately free. There's no, because that's the whole point of it. The whole point is to get free from this person. So like to give him the choice to bring her back. What's the point of this? Like the khula is for her to have her freedom. And so that's why he says, تَمْلِكُ بِهِ الْمَرْأَةُ نَفْسَهَا. And that after this, then she owns her own, like does whatever she wishes to do with herself, and she got free from him. And he doesn't have the right to go back on her, raja. He doesn't have any raja upon her, إِلَّا بِنِكَاحٍ جَدِيدٍ. So if he gets married to her again, okay, that's then with a new nikah from the very beginning. He redoes this from the very beginning. In this case, he would have the raja, that is whatever is left. So one would be counted for him, and he has one. Then he has the other 2 talaq left. And so in the second talaq, if he divorced her again, then he has 1. That would be there, and the count still goes. Like that first one counts as 1 from the 2 talaq that still have the raja for him to go back. And so he says here, وَيَجُوزُ الْخُلْعُ فِي الطُّهْرِ وَالْحَيْضِ. And so he says it's permissible for the khul'. And so we're going to talk about the tartib here is a little different, because we're going to talk about in talaq, it's not permissible to do it at this time. But he says it's permissible for khul' to do it during, whether it's in tuhr, where she is not on her period, or in hayd. So anytime, there's no problem with that, because this is her right that she's going down on, she's asking for it. So since she's the one that asked for it from him, in this case there's no problem with it, as opposed to him doing it from himself. And he says, وَلَا يَلْحَقُ الْمُخْتَلِعَةَ طَلَاقٌ. And so if the person does, so say this person actually divorces, he does the khula. And then after he does the khula, he decides he wants to throw on a couple more divorces. And he doesn't have the right to do this anymore. So he's not going to throw on a 3 and 4 after he already did the khula and it's already completed. He has no right to keep throwing on any extras. So it'd just be 1. Because he severed the tie between him and her. He severed it with the khula. So he can't throw on extra ones. And we'll talk about in talaq, like a normal raja, he could throw an extra talaq afterwards. Up to 3, He could throw in the extra ones and if there's 3, then there's no coming back until the other conditions have been met. But in here, if she has gone through it, then she wouldn't have any. There would be no other talaq that would be able to reach her after that. It would just be that one. And so this is the bab of khula, and it would almost make a little more sense if we did talaq first, but I'm just going along with the order of the book here. And normally it would come after that because it's like an actual branch off of talaq. Like this is a type of talaq. And so it'd be better if we talked about talaq first. And we're going to go into talaq inshallah. And so any questions on that? So he says here, fasun. And this is talking about talaq. And talaq, in linguistically, it means like untying the knot. It's like untying a knot. And then sharan, it's like to get rid of. It's like to untie the knot of nikah with lafz at-talaq or nahwi. So like with the actual word of talaq or nahwi, or something that holds the same meaning as that. And so it's important that the word, it's something that is said. This is something that is said. And of course, can it be done with kinaya? We'll talk about that inshallah. And the arkan of talaq, there's 5 of them. One is the sigha, which is the words that are said. And then the second one is a mahal, and which is the person that it's done on. Wal wilaya, which is like the bond between this person and the one that he's doing it. Like he has to have the ability to do this. And waqast, and he also has to intend for it, and also a mutallaq, which is the person that does it. And so here he says here, what talaq darbani, and darb, which is a type. So he says there, talaq is of 2 types. One, sarih, and the other one is kinaya. And so in sarih, he says here, فَالصَّرِيحُ ثَلَاثَةُ أَلْفَاظٍ الطَّلَاقُ وَالْفِرَاقُ وَالسَّرَاحُ. And so he says here that a sarih is something which is clear cut. In this one, he says here, there's 3 wordings for it. One is talaq, or anything that is mushtaq from it, like sarf. Anything in sarf that goes back to this word on talaq, then it would be sarih. It would be of the words that are sarih. And then the other one is firaq. And this is the madhab of Imam Shafi'i. And this, he looked at the Quran, and he saw when talaq was mentioned in the Quran, what are the words that were used in the Quran? If it was used in the Quran, then this is the words that are sarih, and anything other than this is kinaya. So the words that are used in the Quran are وَإِذَا طَلَّقْتُمُ النِّسَاء. Alright, so we have a talaq. فَسَرِّحُوهُنَّ. Alright, we also have this, أَوْ فَارِكُوهُنَّ. We also have these words. So anything that comes to these 3 main words, this is sarih, which means, we'll talk about the basis of this, but sarih he doesn't have to have the intention for talaq in it. All he needs to have is the intention that he said the word. So so he just needs to have said the word with the intention of him saying that word. So he doesn't necessarily have to have the intention of talaq. He said the word, and so this is sarih, as opposed to, and so on the madhab of Shafi'i, which they're alone in the firaq and sirah, as far as I know, like the jumhur is against that. That firaq is not sarih. So if you say faraqtuk, like this would be sarih in the madhab of Shafi'i. Or sarrahtuk, this would be farih, and this would be sarih, in that you don't have to think about I meant talaq when I said this. Yeah, go ahead.
If you said talaq, if you said person you divorce, but you were just upset at that moment, but you really didn't mean it, but we just arguing and then you say I divorce you.
If you said the word, if you said the word and you meant the word when you said it.
And that's the
If you said it to the person, you said you're divorced. Like in English, we would use the word divorce. We wouldn't use the word like separated. Would not be the same. Separated is different because you can hold. We'll talk about kinaya is the other type. We'll go into it. But yeah, even if someone is upset and whatnot, it happens with the word itself. And the word divorce or talaq or taliq, like you're taliq, this, he said it to the person and the person was in front of him, it happened. That's one.
even if you regret it right away.
Even if you regret it. Yeah, and who doesn't? No, it's not. Yeah. And so these three words, this is the Shafi'i madhab. They have either talaq, firaq, or sirah. Sirah. And in some of the lahjats from like, I believe in Yemen, the sirah, a lot of times they'll use this word as in like they left. Or they took him out or left. And so like a lot of the shuyukh, like the Yemeni Sheikh Ahmed Makrami, he said like that this shouldn't be considered. You look back at the urf, and if these no longer hold this understanding of talaq, then these words would only it would only be talaq that is taken as sarih. Because maybe someone says something that faraqtuk, and what he meant was he left her. He left her at the store and he was coming back. So and so this is definitely there's a lot of strength to the other madhabs in this. Just because of like we have to look into the urf, that this doesn't have that. But Imam Shafi'i, he held on to the actual wordings that came in the Quran with this meaning. That's sarih, and anything other than that is kinaya. And so he says here for sarih, la yaftakiru ila niyah. And so like the sarih, as I mentioned, he doesn't have to intend talaq by saying these words. Yet all it takes is that he meant saying the word itself. He meant saying the word. When he said it, he meant saying it. Like if he meant to say another word, but he accidentally, his tongue slipped and hit that, no, he didn't mean the word. That's different. That, like, so if he accidentally said talaq and he actually meant like something else, and then or sariq. But and so like his tongue fumbled, okay, that doesn't happen. But if he meant the word when he said it, it happened. You don't have to ask him, did you mean it? No, it's not, did you mean it or not? You said the word, it was done. And that's what he means by la yaftakiru ila niyah. And he says kinaya, which is the other type. Well, kinayatu kullu lafdhan ihtamala talaqa wa ghayrah wa yaftakiru ila niyah. So kinaya is any type of saying that could mean yahtamal, or like ihtamala means like it carries the meaning of talaq and something else. So it's not. It could mean divorce, or talaq is what we'd say in English. We'd say divorce. So if someone said, "I want to separate from you," or "I'm separated from you," if they said, "I'm separated from you," you ask them. You say, "Did you mean a divorce, that you divorced her, or did you mean I'm gonna move out away from you for a little bit?" So you would have to ask him, "What did you mean by this?" And if he said, "No, I meant divorce," then it was divorce. Like or talaq, you meant talaq, okay, then it's talaq. But this word, you'd ask them, did you mean it or no? And so maybe someone said, go back to your father's house. And there's they'll give a bunch of examples in Arabic here. And so like, but if this will, let me see some of the examples he gives. Ilhaq bi ahlik. That's one of the examples that they give, which is like, go back with your family. And so you would ask them, what do you mean by this? Did you mean that this is that this person is and that you're divorcing her, or what? But this could mean that you just want her to go stay with them for a little bit, or maybe not. Maybe you're just trying to punish her. But did you mean talaq with it or no? And so you would ask them. And if he didn't mean it, then it didn't happen. But if he did mean it, then it did happen. And of course, he's the one who knows his niyyah, and that's between him and Allah. And so if he lies about this, between him and Allah, this happened. And so if this was his third one, and he lies about it, between him and Allah, this is zina. So it's important that someone is honest, when they have these rulings. And like some of them that they'll say is like istabra'i rahimak. Like there's lots of kinaya that they'll bring up that comes up, but anything that could mean this and could mean that. If it holds multiple meanings, in this case, you would ask them, did you mean it or not? Did you mean talaq by this or no? And so that's where he brings her. Any questions? Of course, we're going to go into some other details, inshallah. Yeah, and so this is, of course, like understanding just the wordings of talaq. This will come up in Minhaj, and some of the people that talk about Minhaj, they say that Imam al-Nawawi, he went to great lengths of talking about the different types of talaq and all the different ways that it could happen and this, that, and the other. And every book, in some of the books, they'll talk about that people went overboard in certain areas and or like got excited in it. And Imam al-Nawawi, they say he got excited in Bab al-Talaq for this, and he talked about every single furu, and he went really, really far, deep into it. And Umdat al-Sadiq, Wa'adat al-Nasik, he went overboard in Hajj. So like the Kitab al-Hajj is not a Mutn, it's a sharah. So he went very, very into deep, elaborate details. And so Imam al-Nawawi, he goes into elaborate details in the Mutn of Minhaj. Of course, the Mutn should be kind of concise, but they talk about that. But here he's gonna, next thing I'll talk about is the different types of talaq. Because there's different types. There's a time for, there's a time when it's permissible and there's a time when it's haram. So he says, وَالنِّسَاءُ فِيهِ ضَرْبًا. So like in regards to talaq, there are two types of nisa. And so he says, ضَرْبٌ فِي طَلَاقِهِنَّ سُنَّةٌ. And so there's a type where there is a sunnah way of doing the talaq and bid'ah, wa bid'ah. And so when he says, وَهُنَّ ذَوَاتُ الْحَيْض. So for the women that are regularly they're menstruating, like menstruating women, they have periods that are coming and going. In this case, there's a sunnah and there's a bid'ah, way of doing talaq. And the sunnah here is the permissible, halal. Yani halal, like this is permissible for them to do talaq in this way. And the bid'ah is haram. And this is one of the times you'll find sunnah and bid'ah in a completely different context than you were expecting. But when it comes to talaq, there's a specific way of understanding sunnah and bid'ah in talaq. So the sunni, he's going to talk about this here. فَالسُنَّةُ أَن يُوقِعَ الطَّلَاقَ فِي طُهْرٍ غَيْرِ مُجَابٍ فِيهِ. But so he says here that this is the sunnah way is that the person brings in the talaq in a tuhr. A tuhr is the time between two periods, the time between two menses. That time is called tuhr. And so that he does this talaq in a tuhr, this period that is between two menses, and that he hasn't had intercourse with her in that period. So if he had intercourse, like say this person has had intercourse in this period, and she's not menstruating right now, okay? And one, it's like if it's, and he'll talk about the bid'ah, but she's not menstruating right now, and he hasn't had any intercourse in this whole time, from the time that she became pure, from the last menses, he hasn't had intercourse. At this time, if you were to do talaq, it would be sunnah. And so the other type, which is the bid'ah, the bid'i, this is an yuqi at-talaq fi haydun. So this is the one way of doing it, which is anything other than what is mentioned there. So like if she's on her period, it's haram to do talaq. Haram, haram, haram. And of course, there's wisdom behind this that Allah knows. But like it's haram. It's of the talaq bid'i for someone to do talaq on their wife while she's in her period. And of course, there's the wisdom. Like the woman is normally a little more crazy during that time, so there's wisdom behind this. Besides, there's other wisdoms. There's lots of wisdoms in this, but this is one of them. Or also, أو في طهر إن جامعها فيه. Or one of the times that he has had intercourse with her, and from the time that she ended her last menses, then he had intercourse with her, and then he were to do talaq here, in the same that period of purity, he did talaq inside of it after he had intercourse with her, then this is also bid'ah, and it's haram for him to do it. So it needs to be in a time where he hasn't done this. Now, some of the wisdom behind this, one is that this also makes sure that someone thinks about what they're doing. before they do it. This is like one of the wisdoms that you can see, like for him to make sure that it was in one of these ways and that they haven't had like this close intimate relationship. Also, of the benefits that the shurah will mention is that for her this is easier because she has to wait for 3 periods. And so this would lengthen the period if she had a intercourse in this period. And also there's another reason that's a very important reason, is she doesn't know if she's pregnant. And this is like a course of, if someone all of a sudden they did talaq on a woman and she's driving him crazy, and he had intercourse with her just a little while ago, maybe she got pregnant and now she has a kid. This changes things, you know, between him and her. So of course then he's gonna have a lot of regret. And this, but if he knew that she came out of her haid and he hasn't had intercourse with her since then, and then he did it, there's not going to be that same regret. And also that time will not be elongated for her, because that then her three thalathat quru', and so like these would be, this first period will be 1. It won't be, she won't have to get another one. So like if there is, so there has to be 3 tuhur. We'll talk about the iddah, but it's 3 athar. So like the time that she has to wait will be 3 athar. And so if she was in this first one wouldn't count for her because she had intercourse in it. So it would elongate the amount of time that she would be on her iddah, which is harming her. So these are of the benefits of making sure that someone doesn't do it bid'i. And of course, say she doesn't have, he mentioned here, an-nisas fihi an-darban. There's 2 types. The first type is the type, he says, the watul hayd, the ones that have menses. And the other type that don't have menses. And he says here, with darbun laysa fi talaqihinna sunnatun wala bid'atun wa hunna arba'. And so he's like, then there's another type which don't have this breakdown of the talaq that is sunni and bid'i. It's neither this nor that. And this is just, it wouldn't be like haram in this case. It wouldn't be broken down into these specific ways. One of them, he says, there's 4 types of these. He says as-saghira. And so of course, like the one that hasn't even had a period before, haven't had a period yet, this is the saghira. Like this is someone who hasn't come into bulugh. Well, ayisa, this is the one that has gone through her, what do you say, menopause. Ayisa is the woman who's already gone through menopause. And because she no longer has periods. So like Ayisa would be like referring to the fact that she no longer hopes for children. Alright. So this is the Ayisa. And also, well, hamil, so like the one who's pregnant. Hamil is, of course there's no tamrabuta here because it's understood there's only one type of hamil. There's not a pregnant man or a pregnant woman, so it doesn't need, just like ha'id, you don't have ha'idah. So this hamil, it means like a pregnant woman. وَالْمُخْتَرِعَةُ الَّتِي لَمْ يَدْخُلْ بِهَا. And so these are 4 types of women. In these cases, in these ones, there's no sunnah for them, or there's no bid'ah. So it's not like, it doesn't break down into this category. It's just at a general permissibility for that. Now, of course, there's certain times when it would be obligatory for someone to divorce, or it would be like makruh, or it would be haram, or it just be mubah, and these are different. There's different situations for that. Any questions? Of these obligatory type, the obligatory type would be like if there was a marriage problem and they brought a hakim between them to fix the problem, and what they agreed upon, like these 2 people to fix their marriage problems, the only thing they agreed upon was for it to be divorce. That was the solution. Then it's obligatory for him to divorce. And then the time when it'd be mandub is if the woman was just a terrible person, say she was promiscuous, or like she's not doing any of her obligations and whatnot, and it's not befitting for him to be with someone like this. In this case, it would be mandub for him to do talaq. And the haram would be, as we mentioned, the bid'i. So any type in that type which is a bid'i. And then makruh is for a woman who's normal. She's good. She's a good woman, and there's nothing wrong with her character and between them. In this case, it would be makruh to do it. And a lot of times they'll say that this is like most of the talaq for just a upright woman, or like in her status. This would be just in general, it'd be makruh. Some of them said there's also mubah as well, for such as someone who just doesn't like his wife. He has no desire for her and whatnot. So it'd be mubah for him in that case. Allah ta'ala alam. And so the next thing he's going to go into, he's going to talk about some of the ways that the talaq could happen. And of course, like we mentioned, the sigha is one of the arkan of talaq. And so this sigha can take different forms. And so, and he's going to talk about some of these different forms, and also the differences between a person who is a free man, and of the abd is also different in this case. So he says, فَصْلٌ وَيَمْلِكُ الْحُرُّ ثَلَاثَ تَطْلِقَاتٍ. So وَالْعَبْدُ طَلْقَتَيْن. And so the hur, he has 3 times of doing talaq, and that's what he owns in regards to this. And so and the abd owns 2, and normally the abd always gets half of the hur. So if you have someone who is free and you have someone who's a slave, the slave gets half. But what if he, in this case, there's 3, the hur gets 3, and so he gets half of 3. What's that? 1.5. Nothing goes halfway. If you get half of something, he gets all of it. So he gets 3. He gets 2. So that's how it's broken down. You'll find this occasionally. There'll be things that la yataba'ad, and it's going to fall into half, and so he'll get 2. So here, so like the abd, he gets 2 because of course a 1.5. If you have half a talqa, is a whole talqa. Like, and this also, if someone says that he divorced her half of a talqa, or he divorced half of her, this is it's whole. It's one whole talqa, yeah, or tatliqa, like one of them. And so and la yataba'ad. And so he also says here, and the next thing is وَيَصِحُّ الْإِسْتِثْنَاءُ فِي الطَّلَاقِ إِذَا وَصَلَهُ بِهِ. And so he says that it's permissible for someone to do an istithna. We talked about this in usul, that if he does this, if you did this, or then it's going to be in this way, or trying to think of like the proper example of this. But if you were to say something except this, except if you were to have this, so he said you're divorced, except if you're pregnant. He found out she's pregnant. Okay.
So you can pose that condition.
Yeah, he's like you're divorced unless you're pregnant, and so he adds this condition, and then it finds out, oh, she was pregnant when he said this, so she's not divorced. So he could have a condition on there. And we'll also, so he says here istithna, unless you're, that's why I said unless, which is like an istithna, that's like taking away from what's there. If he said this while it's connected, and he also has to mean it while he's doing that. And also some of them, they would say like if you were to do 3 except for 2, say you're divorced 3 times except for 2, and he said this one all together, and he meant it. You're divorced 3 times except 2, then just 1. What if he said you're divorced 3 times except 3?
Nothing.
No. Actually, she gets divorced 3 times, because the 3 except 3, because it's mustaghraq.
3 except 3.
You said 3 except 3. Yeah. That except 3 is batil. So we're stuck with the original thing you said, which was 3. Yeah. And the same thing if someone said 3, you're divorced. What was it? And they said like more than that as well. But if it ever goes to mustaghraq, then in this case that's bad. Yeah. Almost done. So and of course there's lots of other examples of this. And also, what if somebody says you're divorced inSha'Allah? Doesn't happen. Doesn't happen. Unless they specifically meant by saying inSha'Allah tabarruk. If they meant by inSha'Allah, like they're saying inSha'Allah tabarrukan, like to get barakah from Allah in this divorce, and then it goes through. But if they just say you're divorced inSha'Allah, then it doesn't go through. We don't know what Allah willed or not, so we don't make a decision on that. This is, yeah. You can see why in this particular chapter, some of the fuqaha, they go crazy in talking about the different ways that it happens. And also occasionally in the books of usul, they will talk about certain things, and the only place they'll find an example is in talaq and in halaf, like what someone says. They'll come up with a weird scenario. It won't be in the Quran, it won't be in the Sunnah, anyone who said something in this way, but they'll find it in halaf, and then they'll say this. When they talk about like dalail al-alfaz or dalail al-alfaz. So it's also the next thing going on, moving forward here. He says وَيَصِحُّ تَعْلِيقُهُ بِالصِّفَةِ وَالشَّرْطِ. And so it's permissible for him to add something like to connect the talaq with some type of a sifa, which is like some type of characteristic, with shart. So like one of them is if you were to say you are anti-talaq fi shahri kada, like so that you are talaq in this particular month, and so in this case when that month comes you would be talaq. Yeah, if you connected it with that, then boom, and once that month comes, then she is talaq. So and so he could say other types of sifat as well. But this is what he means by sifa. And also a shart, so like in dakhalti dar fa anti talaq. That's one of the ones they'll say, like if you enter the house then you're talaq, or if you talk to so and so you're talaq. Yeah.
So we predefine the condition of talaq, right, for a man, for a woman. But now
the condition, what do you mean by condition?
Like there are a few things, 4 or 5 things, like the person is majnoon, like for men, if he's majnoon, or if he's if the thing is cut off.
This is not for talaq. This is to return. This is like returning bad goods. This is like for fasq of the marriage. This is different than talaq.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. By these things, this is without a talaq. This is just the whole, it's null and void, everyone gets their money back. And you take her back. It's not talaq. So there's a difference. This is why when we talked about the definition of talaq, we said this is nullifying or breaking apart the marriage with the wording of talaq, or something like it, with the wording of talaq. Because there's other ways of nullifying the marriage that aren't with talaq.
But my question is really, so if you say if this month comes, you're divorced,
yeah.
Right? So I thought divorce would be only if maybe the woman has done something, like the man. Okay, the woman. So the man is the one that always does stuff, right? So say to the woman, you're divorced in 3 months, right? Or in month of February, let's say.
All these work. Yeah.
But something must have happened for the man to say that. But what if he's changed his mind by that time?
He said it. When the sifa comes, it happens. There's a way around it. Like if you leave the house, let's say he says if you leave the house, then you're divorced 3. So in this case, how are they going to get away from it? He can do a khula'. He can do a khula' with her, and then start up with a new like he can do a khula' with her, and she she asks him to get divorced for money before the sifa comes. And then she separates from him, and this goes away. Whatever that sifa was, or whatever he said, goes away. And then they can remarry with a new act.
Without someone...
And then they would just have the one for the khula' in that case.
Without someone marrying her.
Without someone marrying her. Without someone... This is like assuming that she hasn't reached the 3. But say someone said, if you leave the house, then you're divorced 3 times. Yeah. And so he wants to get out of this sticky situation. What's the way to do it? She does a khula'. She asks him, she says, I'm going to give you $10, right? I'm going to give you $1 or $2, whatever, and divorce me for $2. This is khula'. She owns herself after that, and then we'll get remarried afterwards. But he has to give her he has to do a new marriage contract. with a wali, with all these other things. Yeah. But that's one way of going around. They talk about some of the ways to get around this. But yeah, if he ever says something, it stays until that connection is dropped. And like khula is one of the ways to actually stop that connection from happening. Such as if he says at the end of Ramadan, you're going to be divorced 3 times. Or every time the sun rises, you'll be divorced. Allah musta'an. So, and shart. And shart is the same. That's why I mentioned here. These are a lot of the shurut and whatnot. And of them, like, of course, you have like in dakhalti dar fa anti talaq. This is one of them. And men, من دخلت من نساء الدار فهي طالق. So that's another way. So if he has multiple women, whoever enters this, then she's طالق. That's one of the shart that they mention here. And there's also كلما, as I mentioned, كلما دخلت الدار أو كلما دخلت الدار واحدة من نساء فهي طالق. So every time that one comes, it's a repeating shart. كلما is a repeating one. Allah musta'an. And so there's other, and so like these are like they'll go into like details and whatnot, and that's not important right now. But so this is basically there's this is called ta'liq, where you have the condition for the talaq to come down, you've connected onto something, and when that something happens, then the talaq happens. And this is of the things that in the jumhur of fuqaha, they say that this it actually happens and whatnot. And then the next thing that he says here is وَلَا يَقَعُ الطَّلَاقُ قَبْلَ النِّكَاحِ. This is also good. And if someone can't do talaq and they can't say, if I married you, then you're divorced 3 times or 2 times. If I marry you, then you're divorced 2 times. He's not married to her in the first place. He doesn't have the ownership of talaq from the get-go. So it doesn't, anything before he's married to somebody, he has no ownership over doing talaq. So as I mentioned before, the arkan of talaq, one of them is wilayah. And he doesn't have wilayah here. He doesn't have the relationship or like the authority to give talaq on someone who's not his wife. So he says, if I marry you, or if he says to one of his other wives, if I marry this girl, then she's divorced 3 times. It doesn't. This is just talking. It doesn't do anything because he's not married to her. Yeah. So, and that's what he says here. And then there's no talaq for someone before they're married to them. And this also comes from the hadith of Tirmidhi. لا طلاق إلا بعد نكاح. So there's no talaq except after nikah. And also he mentions here وأربع لا يقع طلاقهم. So there's 4 types of people that their talaq doesn't happen. Of these 4 types, the first one, as-sabi. As-sabi, of course, we don't take their word for anything. Like as-sabi is a kid. We don't take their word. Like in a court of law, we don't take their word. And this is I mentioned this in like the last class as well. Like the sabi before bulugh, they don't have the ability to make these big judgment calls. So the person who would do this for them is his wali would do the talaq for him. That's the only one that would be able to do that. It wouldn't be for him himself. And also the majnoon. So of course, like you can have marriage between, like, say you have people with Down syndrome and you want them to have a nice marriage. Yeah, go ahead. Like no problem with that. Making sure that people aren't hurting each other, of course. But for them to have a romantic life, even though they're insane, no problem. But their talaq doesn't go through. It would have to be from the end of the wali to do the talaq for them, because they're majnoon. Rufi al-qalam min thalath. And so of course they're from this group. And also when na'im. So the person who's sleeping, he starts babbling in his sleep and he says, Anti talaq, talaq, talaq. Alright. He has to be awake for him to do this. Of course, from the hadith, رفع القلم عن ثلاث عن الصبي حتى يبلغ وعن المجنون حتى يفيق, which like comes back to a senses, وعن النائم حتى يستيقظ. And so, of course, like the person who's sleeping, he's not held accountable. So if he's not held accountable, he's not going to be held responsible for what he said. So this is also, and we take this alongside the other hadith, which will come up. He said there's 4 people. والمكره. And this is of the other hadith that there's in the hadith رفع عن أمتي الخطأ والنسيان وما استكرهوا عليه. And so this is of the other hadith. We put these two together to understand who is held, like when we understand what is taklif, we put these two hadith together, and that's why we come up with the conditions for taklif. And of this, the person who is mukrah, which is forced, in this case, his talaq does not happen. So if someone is forced, in this case, he even if he says it, and he's forced, and he's actually mukrah, and we'll talk about ikrah here, and we'll talk about some of the conditions of it. And then his talaq would not go through. And because of the benefit of ikrah, and there's a lot of understanding, there's a lot of ahkam that goes around ikrah. I'm going to just give a basic rundown of ikrah. What is the condition of ikrah? And I'm using the sharh iqna on this, but he brings it across very well, and it's very concise. So the actual conditions for ikrah is one, that قدرة المكره على تحقيق ما هدهم به المكره. So the first condition is that the person who's coercing, he actually has the ability to do what he's threatening to do. He has the ability. So you have a guy you have like some weak guy on the street that he's saying, I'm going to burn down your house, or I'm going to beat you up, and this, that, and the other, if you don't divorce your wife. I'm saying this is the condition. We're talking about divorcing your wife, but this goes in everywhere. So he says, I'm going to do this, but he's a weakling. He would not be able to do what he's saying he was going to do. Or you have someone that says, I'm going to call, or I'm going to like have the government shut you down, and blah, 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 blah. And you know he has no ties to the government. He has no way to do this. Of course, in this case, he doesn't have this person is not mukrah. And so this is the same thing if someone says a word of kalimat to the kufr, or the same thing. We're coming back to this. This topic is very important. So the mukrah, he needs to be capable of putting out or doing what he's threatening to do. This is the first thing. And then the second thing, that this is tahdidan ajilan, so that he is threatening to do this now. Not I'm going to do it someday in the future. No, it needs to be now. If he's not threatening for it to be now, he thinks about tomorrow maybe. In this case, no. That threatening needs to be like right now, or it needs to be present at hand. Dhulman. Also, this threatening needs to be something that he has no right to do the threatening to, as opposed to someone who does have a right. And of course, and this is, I'll give an example of this after that, but it's that he's threatening to do this and he has no right to do this thing. Like that's dhulm. Biwilayatin aw taghallub. And that he's doing this either with some type of like wilaya, as like authority, or just brute force. Maybe he has authority to put something into play, or he has brute force that he's just going to do. So he's going to he's going to just bust up this person's face or beat them up really hard, or he's going to have them in prison for like a long time. And of course that's just something he says, and then they take him and they do it. So that's because he has the authority to do that. And so then and then also the last condition, the fifth condition here is also ajz al-mukrah an daf' al-mukrih. And so like the mukrah, which is the person who is forced, he's not able to defend himself from this. If he's able to defend himself, then he's not mukrah. And so if he can defend himself from this thing, he's not mukrah, and then he would not fall into this coercion category, because he can defend himself from it. So this is what we have to look at. And also he can either defend himself by actually by running away is one of the ways that he can run away and flee for his safety. This is one of the ways of defending himself, or by defending himself by calling on someone else to help him. He knows he has another guy with him. He can call him right away, and he would stop him from being able to do that. So he's not mukrah if he's able to have another way out of that. And then also the last of the conditions is that he has to have done, or like he has to have reasonable discernment that if he doesn't do this thing that he's being forced to do, that this person's actually going to come through with this threat. He has to have a reasonable done that this person's actually going to come through. Because maybe there's a guy, he knows he's all talk. Maybe he's able to do this, but most of the time he's just talking. In this case, it's not real unless he actually believes that this person is most likely going to do it. So in this case, that would be ikrah. And of course, this is as I mentioned, the first one, which was like ajilan, that it's something that if he says, I'm going to do this to you tomorrow, then he doesn't, then this is not ajil. Like this is not now present at hand, so he's not mukrah right now. When it comes tomorrow, and then he says, I'm going to do it if you don't do it, okay, then we can talk about it. But it needs to be present. Also, dhulman, so like if he does this with a right, say someone has qisas, this person has the right, say this person cut off this person's hand, and this person that he cut off his hand, he has qisas to take off his hand. And he says, if you don't divorce your wife, I'm going to carry through with my qisas with you. He has a right to it. So this is not mukrah, because he has a right to take off his hand. He's not doing this dhulman. He can choose. He has the right to choose. And so then also the ikrah can happen with different ways. One of it is like by scaring someone with like a serious beating. A serious beating, this is one way, just by threatening them with a serious beating, or by imprisonment for a long time. So if someone's going to be in prison for a long time, this is also another thing that would be considered as ikrah. Or it's laf mal. So if someone is going to destroy someone else's property or get rid of their money, or they have a way to freeze their bank account and take all their money, or something of this sort, this is real ikrah. Like that is also like threatening someone's family and whatnot. This is also ikrah. Like that they're going to do this to someone else's family that's around them. This would also be ikrah as well. And this is the basic rundown of ikrah. And it's very important that this topic is studied, especially with a lot of the groups I want to talk about takfir and whatnot, because this is one of the major muwana of takfir, is we have to make sure that this person is not mukrah. So a lot of times when people talk about, oh, this person did this did this, especially with al-hukm bighayri ma anzal Allah, so someone ruling with other than what Allah gave, we have to look into this and see, are these conditions met for an individual, on an individual case, to see whether or not we can place this ruling on them. And so like there's one side that goes to an extreme, like there's one side that goes to an extreme and they just do takfir on the individuals without looking into their circumstance. You have to look into their circumstance to see if they're even mukallaf here with this particular thing. If they fall into a mukrah, then they're not mukallaf, and you can't do takfir on a ghayr mukallaf in this area. And so this is very important that this issue is understood. And in the ikna, there's the breakdown of what I just gave here, and this is great, very very daqiq understanding of what is ikrah. Any questions before moving on? And so the next thing we're going to talk about is raj'ah. And the raj'ah is from rujur'. It's one of rujur'. So you have a fa'la, so you have the wazn fa'la, and sarf is used to say one time of something. So rujur', one time of rujur' would be called fa'la, or like raj'ah ala wazn fa'la. And so this is someone going back into returning back to zawaj. And this is, of course, for the people that are able to do this. So he says, وَشُرُوطُ الرَّجْعَةِ he says, فَصْلٌ وَشُرُوطُ الرَّجْعَةِ أَرْبَعَةٌ. And so there's 4 conditions for this. The first of them, أَن يَكُونَ الطَّلَاقُ دُونَ الثَّلَاثِ. So of course it has to be less than 3. So if he did more than 3 talaq on this person, then he doesn't have the ability to go back on this. And then, so this is the first one, and that is less than 3. وَأَن يَكُونَ بَعْدَ الدُّخُولِ بِهَا. And also the second condition is that he has done this after he has actually consummated the marriage. Like dukhul biha, this means consummation of the marriage. And so this is after the consummation of the marriage. With that, if he hasn't consummated the marriage, then he has no raj'ah. There's no raj'ah for him. فَلَيْسَ عَلَيْكُمْ, and he talks, and this will come up here, but there's no raj'ah for the person who hasn't consummated the marriage. If he divorces her before consummating, then she right away, bye. He has no, I can go back, no, there's no going back. You have to start up with a whole new marriage contract and everything. And he also says, وَأَن لَا يَكُونَ الطَّلَاقُ بِعِوَضٍ. And so like that the talaq is not with iwad, it's not in return for something that he's getting from her. or from because this would be khula in this case. If it's with iwad, then it would be khula, and of course he can't go back on this. So and then also وأن يكون قبل انقضاء العدة. So it needs to be also before the end of the iddah. And the iddah, we'll talk about this in the next chapter, inshallah. Which the iddah is the waiting period, before she can get remarried again. So it needs to be done before that waiting period ends. And of course, if that waiting period is still going, then he can bring her back in that waiting period. If it ends, in this case, if he wants to go back to her, he has to do it with a whole new nikah. Like he has to do a whole new act of nikah, and with the witnesses and everybody, and go through it with a new mahr and everything. He has to start. This is after the iddah, so he needs to be mindful of the iddah as well if he's thinking about going back. And these are the 4 conditions for someone to go back with the raja. And of course, وَبُعُولَتُهُنَّ حَقُّ بِرَدِّهِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ, and like that in aradu islaha. And so like that they're able to go back in the iddah. They have the most right to go back. And of course, this is of the wisdom of the shariah, is that Allah has given the couple a chance before being totally broken apart. They have a chance to think about what's going on. And that time is going. She can't get married to anyone else. He's still, there's still a connection between them. And so until that time period ends, they still have the chance at any moment they can go back. And so Allah has made it easy for people to come back together, and given them that time of that. And of course, if someone thinks about like the conditions for talaq, and I mentioned like the Sunni versus the Bid'i and talaq, and like these different things, they bring a lot of like wisdom to the whole marriage process, and that keeps people together. When they actually go through with the sharia, they'll see that this actually is the best thing for someone's marriage and for everyone's rights in general. And the next thing he's going to go into, he's going to go for he's going to talk about some of the different scenarios of the iddah and whatnot. And so he says here, he says وَإِذَا طَلَّقَ الْحُرُّ إِمْرَأَتَهُ وَاحِدَةً أَوْ اثْنَتَيْنِ فَلَهُ مُرَاجَعَتُهَا مَا لَمْ تَنْقَضِ عِدَّتُهَا. And so he says that if a hur, like a person who is a free person, if he divorced his wife one time, one divorce, or 2, then he has the ability, فَلَهُ مُرَاجَعَتُهَا, like he can go back to her, or take her back, as long مَا لَمْ تَقْضِي عِدَّتُهَا, like as long تَنْقَضِي عِدَّتُهَا. And so as long as her iddah hasn't come to an end, he can take her back at any time. And this happens at the moment. If he says, and this could be with him saying it to himself. Of course, it's best for him to have like witnesses and say this to witnesses around him so they can affirm this, especially if there's a time limit, like that he's worried that the message isn't going to get across in time. So like to have like a couple witnesses that he says, I took her back, just by him saying this. This is how he could take her back. As long as her iddah is still going, then he could take her back. And this is of course for less than 3. So if it's 1 or 2 that he has done, the talaq, then in this case he can still take her back within her iddah, as long as it hasn't ended yet. فإن انقضت عدتها إن كان له عيادة نكاحها بعقد جديد. So if it ended, her iddah ended after this, the 3 periods of purity, if these ended, then at this time he can take her back if he makes a whole new act. بِعَقْدٍ جَدِيد. So he can take her back with a new act, but it's not, we wouldn't say it's raja. لم يراجعها. But this is rather with a new تزوجها جديدا. And so he says وَتَكُونُ مَعَهُ عَلَى مَا بَقِيَ مِنَ الطَّلَاقِ. And so also this is the thing. So if he does take her back, all the talaq that he did previously, all of this is the same amount. So if he had so if this was the second one, and then her iddah ended, and he brings her back, she still has 2. She has 2 talaq. If he divorces her one time, then khalas, then she's haram until she gets into a new marriage and has consummated the new marriage, and then he divorced her, and then her iddah ends from that. So she's haram for him until all of that happens. So he says, وَتَكُونُ مَعَهَا وتكون معه حتى بقي على ما بقي من الطلاق فإن طلقها ثلاثا لم تحل له إلا بعد وجود خمسة أشياء. And so he says, and if he divorced her 3 times, then she is not permissible, لم تحل له, that she's not permissible for him except after the presence of 5 things. And these are the things I just mentioned. 1, انقضاء عدتها منه, the first person, like the first zawj, she has finished her idda minhu, like she's finished her idda from him, and then تزويجها بغيره, then she got married to someone else. ودخوله بها, and then also that وإصابتها, that this other person consummated the marriage with an actual jima' that was actual, that is considered, that actually has the ruling of jima'. So it's not just being alone with her, actually consummated completely. وبينونتها minhu, and then also the last of these 5 things is also that he enters in, like he consummates the marriage and she actually has intercourse with him, and then she is separated from him later. At this point, and then after she's separated from him, like he divorces her, and then her idda ends from him, then she can get back with the original. All of these things have to be done first and foremost. So these are the 5 things that here. Also, just to note, this is there's hadith that لعن الله المحلل والمحلل له, and so like that Allah has cursed the muhallil, which is somebody that goes and he wants to say someone has a wife and he divorced her 3 times. He wants her back. So he tells his buddy, go marry her and then divorce her. Alright? Marry her, consummate, and divorce. Like, do this for me. And this is of the kaba'ir. Like for this person to do this. Because of course if the la'n of Allah is connected with this action, and then he goes, he marries her for this purpose, this haram. Haram for him to marry for this purpose. If he mentions in the act that after I consummate the marriage, you're divorced, then of course like the act is batil. And so like this is very serious sin, and of course it's a terrible thing for anyone to ever get involved in. And that's a serious sin to do this for someone. Of course, if there was problems, the fact that this person divorced her 3 times already shows that there's major issues between them 2. So like to give her a chance to actually experience someone else before even going back to that. You know, like this is what the shariah has given her a chance to actually experience something other than that terrible or that very hard relationship that went through all of that. And so of course, like having this situation happen, of course maybe a man, maybe he finds a woman that has been divorced 3 times, he doesn't know. And nobody told him like the situation between her and her other. And I have heard about this where a person got used. Like a man got used. Basically, he got used to be a muhallil and he was unaware. So he got married with the woman. It was very easy for him to get married. Everything was, wow, it was great. And right after he consummated the marriage, she just turned on him and just turned very, very evil and sour until she wanted him, she was like begging him to divorce her. So of course, like there's no itham on him, but of course, like the people that planned this on him, that's the one, you know, that's very terrible. But he was unaware of this, so like there's no itham on him. But if he was in collaboration with the old spouse and want not to do this for him, this is haram of the kaba'ir. Some of them say the marriage itself is not valid, like the actual, like the from the onset. If he had the intention to do this, his marriage is not valid. It's not the Shafi'i view on that, but but it shouldn't, unless it was like actually told in the actual contract. That's how the Shafi'is look at it. And a lot of times the Shafi'is, they will hold on to the actual wording of the contract and not look into the intentions behind it, which occasionally will allow them to open the doors to things that are bad. You know, but unless it's actually clear, then they don't like, they would say it's like makruh if someone had the intention. But of course, many of the other people say no, this is actually of the kaba'ir, and this is like the stronger opinion. Of course, is that it's of the kaba'ir, that because there's the condition of lan is connected with the person that does this. And if he's doing this with the intention, even if he doesn't say it while he's making the act of nikah, this is the intention. And so, Wallahu ta'ala alam. And so the next couple chapters, he's going to talk about ilat and also dihar, which are similar, but they're a bit different, and also lian. And all of these are certain scenarios of course, like problems of marriage. And one of them is permissible in some cases and not in others, such as ilat. Or technically, ilat is he's going to mention here. It's swearing. It's swearing. He says, وَإِذَا حَلَفَ أَنْ لَا يَطَعَ زَوْجَتَهُ مُطْلَقًا أَوْ مُدَّةً تَزِيدُ عَلَى أَرْبَعَةِ أَشْهُرٍ فَهُوَ مُولٍ. And this is from ilat. And like awla. And so like this is if someone swore that I'm not going to have intercourse with my wife. Just like this. He said, I'm not gonna have intercourse with you. And he said, Wallahi, I'm not gonna have intercourse with you. And he doesn't give any time period. He's mulin. Like he has ila. And so لِلَّذِينَ يُؤْلُونَ مِن نِسَائِهِمْ تَرَبُّصُ أَرْبَعَةِ أَشْهُرٍ. This is the ayah that comes in this meaning. This is something that would happen. And this is, of course, the right of the woman is to have intercourse, at least, and this is that mudda, which is 4 months. And so if he just says, I'm not going to do this, wallah, I'm not going to do this, and this is the ila, is like, it comes from halif. So in this case, or he says something that goes over 4 months, that I'm not going to have intercourse for you for more than 4 months. He says 5 months, or 4 months and a day. In this case, he would be mulin. And then a bunch of ahkam would come in regards to this. If it's 4 months or less, in this case, he, like maybe linguistically, it'd be considered mulin. And it could be permissible in certain circumstances, such as the Prophet ﷺ, he did this for a month for his wives, when they were causing some issues. They were asking for extra things. And so in a way of like ta'deeb, he did this, where he swore they wouldn't come near them for a month. And so this is for less than 4 months, but more than 4 months, then it would be ilad that would have certain ahkam put upon it. And so he said, وَيُؤَجَّلُ لَهُ إِنْ سَأَلَتْ ذَلِكَ أَرْبَعَةَ أَشْهُرٍ. And so and then if the woman, if she wants, and she asks for like her rights, in this case he would be given 4 months. This person who was mulin, that is either said, I'm not going to have intercourse with her at all. He just said, I'm not going to have intercourse with her. Or he said 4 or 5 months, or anything more than 4. And so in this case, they would give him 4 months. They give him 4 months, and you let him do his thing for 4 months. Then ثم يخير بين الفيئة والتكفير أو الطلاق فإن امتنع انطلق عليه الحاكم. And so then he would be put between a couple. He would have to make a decision here. 4 months, he would either al-fay'a, which is returning. Al-fay'a is returning. فَإِنْ فَأُوا. And so this is the fay'a, which is going back to her. And so this what takfir. And so then he would do the fay'a and takfir as well. And takfir because he made the halaf, and the halaf has a takfir for the halaf. So if he goes back to her, then he's going to be breaking his oath. And then he breaks his oath, and he has to pay the kafara for breaking the oath. And we'll talk about this at the later chapters. And he would do this. This is one option. Or the other option is he divorces her. He divorces her. And if he's not going to divorce her, then the hakim will go in and divorce her for him. He will, and this is sometimes I'll talk about divorce, but this is one of the times when someone else would do the divorce. When he doesn't want it, if he did this in this circumstance where he would be, his wife would be divorced for him in this circumstance. If he refuses to do the divorce himself, because of course this is her right within anything more than 4 months. But she needs to bring this to a judge to do this with her. And also, if there is no judge, say the people are in a land that doesn't have a judge, then they go to a faqih, and they would go to him and they would make him a judge between them. They go to someone who's knowledgeable, and they'd say, we make you our judge. Both of them need to do this, both sides of the issue. They go to the person, they say, we're going to make you the judge in this matter, and you rule with Allah's ruling between us. And when they both agree, when they both come to this, then they're both bound by whatever he sees as right. And this would be similar to the hakim in this case. And the zihar is a little different than this. But this, he says, فَصْلٌ وَالظِّهَارُ أَنْ يَقُولَ الرَّجُلُ لِزَوْجَتِهِ أَنْتِ عَلَيَّ كَظَهْرِ أُمِّي. And so he says, like he gives the example of zihar here, which is for a man to say to his wife that you are to me like my wife's back. Like my mother's back, afwan. And the reason that the Arabs, they used to do this is one, like dhahr is used like for writing. Like normally, like it's markab, like the place that they would ride. So they say like to their wife that you're like my mother's back. So it's just like really nasty, a nasty way of saying this. And what they meant by this is they meant this was a type of divorce. This is like a type of divorce that they would do back in the day. They would just say this, and it was a type of divorcing that they would do. And also the ila was a type of divorce as well, but it was a divorce that was indefinite because she's still basically married, technically married, but she's never going to have any relations. And they would do this to harm her. And so this is what Islam came and put a time limit on it. If you're going to do this, you have 4 months. You either choose. At 4 months, you choose. What are you going to do? And this is what Islam does in many areas. We'll see that Islam doesn't totally destroy something that is there, but rather it puts it in its place. You know, I gave him 4 months. Okay, you want to do this? Okay, you have 4 months. Anything more than this, then you got to make a choice. And so zihar was also a type of was a type of divorce that they would use, a divorce mechanism, which is nasty. And of course, this is a nasty way to say something. And Allah mentions as وَإِنَّهُمْ لَيَقُولُونَ مُنْكَرًا مِنَ الْقَوْلِ وَزُورًا. Like this is munkar from what they say, and wazur. And zur is like it's something that's completely false, and it's something that they should never say. And so if someone does this, of course there's a penalty for this. If someone says this, then they have then in this case, he mentions here, and just a little talk about the sigha, he said it's for someone to say anti alayya kadhahri ummi, and the Shafi'i say anything that is a similar meaning. If you didn't say dahr, say you said yad, or you said any other thing of your thing, you said any other type of her body and whatnot, this would also fall into a similar meaning of it. Or if you didn't say say you said jaddatik, she's also haram. Or like any of the other people that are from his maharim that he's not allowed to marry, this also has the same meaning. They would say this is also zihar as well. So they make qiyas on this from someone who's from his maharim. So anyone from his maharim that he says you like dahr of anyone from his maharim or any other type of their body from that, unless it's something that is like that would be taken otherwise. Of course, like if he said you're like my mother, and he meant this in a way like you're wonderful. Okay, that's different, you know. But this is, but if it was like this, they do qiyas and they pull it to the other things. Of course, if it's something that's muhtamal, then they have to look at that and look at the niyyah if that, inshallah. So he mentions after that, فَإِذَا قَالَ ذَلِكَ وَلَمْ يُتْبِعْهُ بِالطَّلَاقِ صَارَ عَائِدًا وَلَزِمَتْهُ الْكَفَّارَةِ. So here the view of the Shafi'is here is if after he says this to his wife, and then he doesn't say that she's talaq afterwards right away, in this case he is going back on his word. He said that she was like his mother's back, and if she doesn't, if at this case, if he wants to, he doesn't say that she's talaq, then in this case he basically went against what he was just saying. Because if he said she was talaq, okay, then this is kinaya. You could say maybe this is a nasty kinaya that he said, and he also made sure that it was thought and that she was divorced afterwards. Okay, but if he said this and then he's still not saying that she's talaq, then he's basically accepting her as a wife, and then he would be considered aid. ثُمَّ يَعُودُونَ لِمَا قَالُوا. And so they would say like aid, which is like going against what they said. This is the interpretation that the Shafi'is have in it. And then the kaffara would be obligatory for him. And of course, he didn't talk about the kaffara, and this comes from the ayah. فَتَحْرِيرُ رَقَبَةٍ. And so like the first thing is he has to, the kaffara is إِتْقُ رَقَبَةٍ مُؤْمِنَةٍ. And here he mentions mu'minah, it's not in the ayah, but this is the taqir al-mutlaq from the other ayat of فَتَحْرِيرُ رَقَبَةٍ مُؤْمِنَةٍ from the kaffaratul qatl. And so this is the kafara for the dhihar is like that. So they'll put the mu'mina, it needs to be a believing slave that they free. And if he doesn't, فَإِن لَمْ يَجِدْ فَصِيَامُ شَهْرَيْنِ مُتَتَابِعَيْنِ. And so he says here, مُتَتَابِعَيْنِ. But he says here also in regards to the slave, he says, إِتْقُ رَكْبَةٍ مُؤْمِنَةٍ سَلِيمَةٍ مِنَ الْعُيُوبِ الْمُضِرَّةِ بِالْعَمَلِ. So also he adds these other conditions as well. So she needs to be a believing slave, or it can be he. It needs to be a believing slave that is free from any uyub, like any type of deficiency that would be affecting someone, affecting the slave in its work. And this is similar to, of course, if someone is going to do this, then this is also similar. Like if we have if we're doing udhiyah, we need to make sure when we're giving the sacrifice that the sacrifice is free of any defects, of like certain defects that we mentioned. And this is also similar to that. So if like the slave is like like he's missing an arm or something, this is a big deal. You know, of course, if he's just kind of a simpleton, that's no problem. But if it's like an actual ayub that is a major thing that would prevent him from working, then in this case where he's missing a leg or something, of course, then he wouldn't count for that. It'd have to be a slave that counted for all that, and that was free from a major defect, and that would affect his working. فَإِن لَمْ يَجِدْ فَصِيَامُ شَهْرَيْنِ مُتَتَابِعَيْنِ. And if he doesn't find this, then he needs to do fasting for 2 months. And this is 2 months straight without any break. Of course, like at the nighttime, he can break in the nighttime, but this is 2 months of fasting every single day, and he has to make sure that every single day is connected with the one after it. So he can't break it. If he stopped at one point without like a major excuse or something, such as like say Ramadan came in, he has to fast Ramadan. But if he stopped, he broke the 2 months, then he's gonna have to pick up from the beginning, because he has to fast the 2 months altogether. And all of this has to be done before touching his wife again. We're going back to her. And so he says, فَإِن لَمْ يَسْتَطِعْ. So if he's not able to do this, say he's an older man and he can't do this because of some type of marad, he has to take medication or something of that sort, or it's way too hard on him, he just can't do it. In this case, he can فَإِطْعَامُ سِتِّينَ مِسْكِينًا. Then he can feed 16 miskin. And he says, how much does he feed each one of them? كُلُّ مِسْكِينٍ مُدٍّ. And of course, the feeding, when we talk about feeding and the Shafi'i Fiqh, this feeding is not giving them a plate of food. This is giving them actual grain that they can cook for themselves whenever they wish to do it. And it needs to be 16 people, or 60, afwan. It needs to be 60 different poor people, miskin. And this, of course, the miskin is at a little higher level than a faqir. Faqir is even more poor than a miskin, but it's someone that has need. So he needs to give 60 people 1 mud of ta'am for this. This is if he can't do if he can't do the 2 months of fasting all the way. If he's able to do it, then he can't go to this. He says, وَلَا يَحِلُّ لِلْمُظَاهِرِ وَتُهَا حَتَّى يُكَفِّرَ. And so, of course, he's not allowed to have intercourse with his wife that he did the dhihar on until he does the kafara. And so he has to do the kafara. Say he can't do any of it, then he can't have intercourse with his wife until he does one of them. Yeah, he has to do one. And say he's too poor to pay for 60, and he's also too weak to do the 2 months. And he has to do it when he can, and he also can't have intercourse with his wife until he finishes it. So maybe it's until he gets enough money for the 60 mud to get to the different people. And of course, and he can't break it up half and half. So he can't say I'm going to do 1 month and do 30 mud. They can't do that. It's either one or the other. So this is the bab dihar. And let me see here. What time is it? We have one last chapter in this major category. We'll leave this for the next time, inSha'Allah, which is li'an, which we mentioned a little bit, which is li'an or mula'ana, which is basically where someone accuses the wife of zina, but he doesn't have 4 witnesses. And so we'll talk about that, and so of course, like there's we'll talk about hadd al-qadh at the end of the book. They'll have the hadd al-qadh, but this is a way to get rid of that for him. And there's also other ahkam alongside of that. Any other questions about what we went over today before we go? وصلى الله وسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين.